You're living a zombie-like existence and calling it life. We've collectively forgotten what it actually feels like to be alive, and most people don't even realize it. Because modern society wants us to feel dead inside, while underneath it all, there's something real, pulsating, waiting to be awakened inside of you. Alive people are dangerous to a system built on control. Around 2010, I had an out of body experience. It was just a regular day teaching a regular class. All of a sudden, I left my body and began hovering high up in one corner of the classroom. For the first time, I saw myself live from the outside. I saw myself perform, execute, and I realized something terrifying. I was there, but not there. I was functioning, but not fully living. I wasn't being true to the Bible quote, I came so that they may have life and have it abundantly. God came for people to not just survive, but to actually be alive. And I wasn't, and I was far from the only one. We live in a system that suppresses aliveness, not accidentally, but by design. That's why it's imperative we look at why this happens, how it happens, and how to begin to recognize where aliveness still exists. As a human being, you have a natural tendency to create, express, expand, feel intensely, to follow what feels exciting, what makes you grow, to entertain curiosity, creative impulses, what makes you feel fully engaged with life. Not necessarily in a chaotic way, even though it can include chaos, but in a way that is responsive, awake to what is in front of you, moved by things, pulled towards what feels real. Nietzsche calls it will to power. I call it aliveness or life pulse. This vitality is natural, raw, magnetic, always in motion. It's intrinsic to each person. It makes you feel like your life is worth living. It doesn't stay still. It doesn't settle into fixed, predetermined forms. It wants to move, to change, to become. And that's exactly the problem. What kills this vitality is suppression, normalization, control. That voice that tells you, no, you cannot do that. Modern society is designed to kill vitality. And this is not done randomly, but by design. Because vitality, aliveness, is by nature disruptive, hard to control, unpredictable. It doesn't follow a script. It's non-conforming. It defies categorization. It makes you free. And freedom at that level is incompatible with systems that require stability. Systems like modern society that promote conformity, groupthink, herd mentality. So, what gets promoted instead is not aliveness, but control and regulation, not intensity, but moderation, not individuality, but alignment with the group. Inside modern systems, boldness is flagged as too much, independent thought as problematic, intensity as instability. Only a narrow range of expression is deemed acceptable. Agreeableness, not truth, becomes the highest value. Logic over creativity, predetermined roles over individuality, linearity over alive and directed chaos, order over integrity. When I had my out of body experience in 2010, I realized I was existing but not living. I was performing roles instead of responding to what felt real. I was like most modern people today, weak, disconnected, flattened because they've lost touch with what makes them most human: aliveness. Alive people are dangerous to a system that thrives on control. Aliveness is a threat to how modern society has been intentionally built, because someone who's truly alive doesn't just adapt, they respond. They move only when something feels real. They don't stay inside roles that don't make sense to them, which makes them unpredictable. And unpredictability is a problem for systems that rely on stability. When you're not afraid of feeling fully alive, you become way harder to manage, way harder to categorize, harder to integrate into pre existing structures. And not because you're really threatening, but because you're not compliant. And instead of creating space for that, for aliveness, the system adjusts the person. It narrows what is acceptable. It reinforces group thinking. It replaces direct experience with controlled and mediated simulation. And how does this suppression of aliveness actually happen? We have to be extremely vigilant because it's subtle and therefore more insidious. We live in a strange paradoxical reality. We have more stimulation than ever before, more access, more input, more things to consume, scroll, react to. On the surface, that stimulation looks like aliveness. It looks like movement. It looks like intensity. It looks like engagement. Because in those moments, something inside of us is being stirred, but it's not the same thing. Stimulation, dopamine chasing, is not aliveness. Because real aliveness comes from direct contact with reality, not through reality consumed by way of social media apps. What modern society offers instead is mediated experience: social media, fast food, pornography, dating apps. These things are designed to mimic the feeling of aliveness without requiring actual engagement with life. They only deliver empty pleasure that, if you really pay attention, doesn't feel like pleasure at all. Instead of nourishing you, it depletes you, like drinking salt water. Within this controlled, extremely controlled scenario, the real impulse towards aliveness, the one that will move you, disrupt things, change things, has no space to express itself. It gets suppressed every minute of every day. And this suppression is not violent, and that's why it's even more dangerous. It gets suppressed when you live a life that doesn't feel real. Through perfectly optimized routines, through expectations, through the subtle pressure to stay within a certain range of behavior. When aliveness is repressed, it doesn't disappear, it turns inwards. The energy is still there, it just has nowhere to go. And that's when the chronic symptoms show up: the neurosis, the addictions, the obsessions. It's no coincidence that we're in the midst of a mental health crisis. And even on a simpler day to day level, misdirected aliveness becomes chronic overthinking, confusion, self doubt, loss of contact with what's real. Aliveness never goes away, but in modern society, it has become extremely difficult to read. The problem is not that you lack vitality, it's that your vitality has been consciously suppressed by a system that fears it. And now it keeps looping inwardly with nowhere to go. And that creates the very distinct feeling that something in your life is off. Aliveness is not gone, it never goes away. It's a field that is always present. You are part of it, but you've been living inside a constructed system that has made it extremely hard to recognize. Aliveness, real vitality, life pulse. You cannot find these things in the places you've been taught to look. Not in constant simulation, not in optimization, not in performance, not in trying to become someone you're not. Aliveness can only be found in moments of direct contact with reality. Simone Weil describes this as attention. Not attention as focus or productivity, but attention as presence. A way of being where nothing stands in between you and what is in front of you, where you're not managing the experience, interpreting it, or trying to turn it into something. You're just touching it directly. It's in those moments that something shifts. You stop becoming a spectator to your own life and start actually living it. It's in those moments that things feel more real, more immediate, more alive. Weil also speaks about something she calls decreation. The idea that what separates you from reality is not a lack, but an accumulation. That is to say, roles, identities, narratives about who you're supposed to be. And aliveness returns not by adding more, not through better habits or better routines, but by letting something fall away. Of course, there are examples of people who are fully alive. There are not many, but they exist. And their energy is just different. Not because they exert force or domination or just display intensity for its own sake. Their charisma lies in simplicity, in direct contact, in humility, in truth. An example would be Saint Francis of Assisi, who promoted childlike joy, a joy that didn't come from achievement or control, but from lightness, from non attachment, even from a kind of foolishness. Not foolish as in naive, but free from the need to manage everything. Foolish as innocent. There was nothing between him and reality. That's why he was able to talk to animals and commune with the sun, the stars, the moon, the ocean. There was no layer of abstraction, no constant self monitoring, just direct contact with life in both its beauties and its difficulties. And this is important because aliveness is often misunderstood. It's not force or just intensity, it's not chaos for the sake of chaos. Nietzsche saw one side of it, the drive to expand, to become, to express. But there's also another dimension, aliveness as presence, as contact, as the ability to be fully with something without needing to control it. Aliveness as simplicity, as a kind of spiritual nakedness, as sensation, movement, pulse. You don't need to manufacture this. You've already felt it in small moments when something actually moves you, even if you don't know why. When you're outside feeling the sun on your skin, when you're not thinking about yourself, when something unexpectedly surprises you. The sad thing is that nowadays we almost immediately override it. We go back into our head, back into control, back into the structures that feel more familiar. Because the other reality of those moments of pure presence overwhelms us with their intensity. So we retreat back to what is comfortable. And modern society encourages this. So the problem is not that aliveness is gone, it's that it has become difficult to recognize and even harder to trust. Because it doesn't look like what you've been taught to value by a system that wants to control you. Aliveness is quieter, simpler, less controlled, but it's also the only thing that actually feels real. Hey, thank you for watching. If what I'm sharing resonates with you, make sure you hit subscribe to be notified when new videos are released. And if you want to go deeper, I share longer reflections, frameworks, and updates in my newsletter. The link is below. This channel is a growing body of work about restoring aliveness in a world that quietly trains you to live at a distance from your own life.